Shall I call the meeting to order? Hello, Roger. Well, thank you for coming to the. I think it's the third meeting of the Scrutiny Committee. So we have the normal agenda. You all know the building. There are no fire alarms tonight, so I think if there is an alarm, it's a real alarm. We have to make our way out to the car park. So here we are. So without any further ado, I'll go into the agenda. So first of all, are there any apologies for absence?
Thank you, Chair. We've received apologies from Councillors Archer, Maelstrom, Slack and Whitehead. Substituting is Councillor Dobbs.
Thank you very much. Okay, no members of the public, so we'll move on to the approval of the meetings of the last meeting's minutes. Has everybody read the meetings? Do you propose them? Anybody want to second them? Right. Are there any changes or anything that need to be made to the minutes, or any comments on the minutes? No. Okay. All those in favour? And you're not, you're abstaining, actually. Yeah. Okay.
Chair, if I can I just, I know you've approved the minutes, but just to bring members up to speed and just to refresh them since that last meeting. We have circulated, following on from the discussions we had at that last meeting, information around sickness, absences, around the council tax and the differences between the percentage of council tax raised and the actual financial values. And you will have also received in the past week some historic data in relation to key performance indicators.
Okay. Right, so moving forward, members are required to declare the existence and nature of any interest that they may have in subsequent agenda items. Those interests are the matter related to money or that which can be valued in money, affecting the member, their partner, their extended family, and close friends. If any interests become apparent at later stages, you can declare that your interest then. So does anybody have any interest to declare? No? Okay. So let's go on to the substantive part of the meeting. So the performance management, corporate plan and key performance indicator outturn. So this report, I think, shows by and large a very positive position that the council has arrived at. We went through it earlier. We couldn't see very many red areas. There are some yellow areas. Would anybody... Mike, did you want to say anything about this before we move forward?
Chair, I was actually going to introduce for members' benefit Claire Allen, who's the Corporate Policy Officer. Claire works in the team that I head up, and she's been responsible for the preparation of this report, and as with other reports of a similar nature to previous meeting as well. So I thought that it would probably be worthwhile Claire coming tonight just to run through the report. And then between us we can answer any questions.
Right, thank you very much.
Yeah, not really anything much to add to that, because I think you summarised it very well. We're very pleased with the performance. The majority of indicators for both the corporate plan and the key performance indicators, which measure organisational health, are looking very healthy. The majority are on track. Some of them are showing really excellent performance. The historical KPI information that was circulated showed that, yet again, our planning functions are at an excellent level and have been for several years. So it's generally a very positive report, with only a few actions that, although the show red at the time, have now got mitigating actions in place, and are showing progress as we move into Q3, which will come to an end at the end of this month. So yes, a very positive report, and we're very pleased so far. But if there are any questions where we can provide any further information, then that's what I'm here to do for you, if you'd like to ask anything.
Yes, very good report. I just had a quick query really on page 14 of the report. This may be me misreading the figures again, but under the section there where we're looking at key performance indicators for quarter one and quarter two, the revenue and benefits ones seem to be a long way below the target there. And I understand that there are, I think there are some issues there in terms of changes that have affected those figures. But am I reading those right? Is that really the case?
Are you looking at speed of processing new claims for housing benefit and council tax support? Is that the ones?
Okay, so it's council tax percentage collected within the year and similarly non-domestic rates.
Yeah. The quarterly figures aren't always a fantastic reflection of the year because of the way that council tax is collected at various different points and throughout the year different things affecting the results. So the managers involved are confident that these are good results, but that the overall yearly performance will show higher at the end of the full 12 months rather than quarterly or 6 monthly. They're on track, but it doesn't show until they get to the end of the year.
That's okay.
How they explain it to me in layman's terms.
Chair, if I can just clarify that those are cumulative figures. So at the end of quarter one, it's 33.3% collection of the total. At the end of quarter two, it's 61.5%. So at the end of quarter three, it'll be up again. And then at the end of quarter four, it'll be hopefully somewhere near 98.4%. And that goes with the same with the non-domestic rates as well.
In fact, if you think of it that way, they're well ahead because obviously 33% is a quarterly, is a third, whereas you've only collected a quarter of the time used.
It could be a good move maybe in future just to put down that's a cumulative growing figure throughout the year.
Yeah, certainly. Thank you. We'll note that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Peter Dobbs.
Thank you, Chair. I probably ought to know the answer to this question, but the targets, how are they derived? Is it just a year-on-year improvement that we're looking at? So, for example, the one that's red, 58.5 is the target. The percentage of household waste essentially goes to do something useful. And you've got 57.1. Where did the 58.5 come from, basically?
Hand that one over to Mike because I wasn't here. It was set at the last round of looking at these figures. So I think that was November last year, something like that. So the targets were agreed in November last year at council, I believe. Where they exactly come from, that might be able to shed more light on that.
The sort of origins of each individual target vary from target from indicator to indicator. Some are the same target and have been the same target year on year for a number of years, and that reflects the fact that they've essentially been the same indicators. Some of them, and the waste one is one where it has varied from year to year, depending upon the circumstances we identify ourselves facing in relation to sort of the household waste collection service and the recycling collection services. The target we've set ourselves in the past on waste and recycling has been higher than 58.5, but given changes in the contract arrangements, those have varied. And whilst we've got 57.1 as being red, the situation with that is that, as Claire said, it is the first quarter of 4, and generally we do see a potential uptick, particularly when we get to Christmas time, where the amount of recycling does increase. And if one looks at the work we've done on the corporate plan previously, you'll see that 57.1 and 58.5 is still a very good performance level, particularly when you measure it against national targets, and not against national targets, but if you benchmark it against other authorities within our group and nationally, we're still performing pretty well. So we're comfortable with that, even though that figure might be red. We're comfortable that there's not really much we need to do significantly at this point in time to address that particular indicator.
So you're sort of beating yourself up unnecessarily, it seems to be, you know. Is it, obviously I wasn't there when this target was agreed, but clearly to be some percentage of national norms would seem to be perhaps a more appropriate, and I'm slightly concerned about the idea that it's a moving target as well, because it isn't really a target if you keep adjusting it, if you see what I mean.
Just to make sure that the targets you set are specific, measurable, achievable, realistic and timely. They're smart targets. So, you know, in looking at those targets on a year-on-year basis, we need to be mindful of what are the circumstances that we find ourselves in relation to each of those individual targets. And we need to make sure that we're setting targets which we think are realistic and can be achieved. And clearly, in the past, we have with waste and recycling, with certainly the recycling rate, has gone up and gone up and gone up and gone up. But we've also got to be mindful of the fact that there has been changes in circumstances as time has gone on, particularly in relation to the way in which the market is operated, particularly in relation to which the contract we have as an authority with the waste providers. So those have to be, in that particular, those have to be varied to make sure that we're putting something in place which is realistic and achievable over the course of the 12 months we're looking at. And if we end up in, you know, what we don't want to do is put a situation where the target is one where we're going to fail at the end of the day. We need to make sure we can deliver on those targets.
Mike, can I ask how many of the, well, that's the wrong question. Some of these are based on national national key indicators. Would it be useful in the report to show those and show sort of benchmark numbers for those?
Well, we do have quite a lot of benchmarking information, which we can make available either alongside or within the report itself. As you say, some are nationally benchmarked and some are not, so those figures won't be available for everyone. I should say that we are at the moment doing a review of the key performance indicators as a whole, because we just want to make sure that they are relevant and specific to the work we're doing. And also, with respect to yourselves, whether that's the information that you want to see, or if there's anything that you think would better give you information about council performance that you'd like to see.
Okay, well, there is the new corporate plan, and presumably when you do that, you'll be taking into account the policies in the corporate plan.
Yes, exactly. As corporate priorities change, it might be that there are other indicators that we can report on that reflect what the new administration want to see and want to know about going forward. So it is under review at the moment.
Chair, if you also remember in the minutes from the last meeting, that particular issue around some of the areas that members wanted to see included within the key performance indicators are some of the things around staff and resident survey work and the analysis of that in relation to satisfaction, both in staff terms and in residents terms, and that's the sort of thing that we're sort of starting to look at within the sort of officer working group that's been set up to do that. The other thing to say is that there is as Claire says, there is a national benchmarking group of which we're a member, which the LGA provide us data on a regular basis, and which we feed into as well. But also, and we haven't included this because it's only published on an annual basis, in the previous report we benchmarked ourselves against the Ministry of Office
of Local Government.
Yeah. So they're obviously a new organisation set up to replace the Audit Commission, and we're able to sort of benchmark ourselves against that data that they're providing and utilise that information. And we'll continue to feed that back to members as and when that's updated across the board.
Okay, well, so is there would there be a timetable for doing that?
My understanding is that information is provided. The LGA is provided quarterly, and we can provide that quarterly. But the offlog stuff data is provided on an annual basis.
Right, thank you. So we could include the benchmark numbers from the LGA work
Yeah,
on our quarterly surveys.
yeah, we can do that.
And then annual one on the annual. On
Yeah,
the
and that will be
final
the
report.
outturn data. We can do that on outturn.
Okay, Nick.
Thank you, Chair. This was really off the back of just some of the KPI details I saw in here. And I know these are retrospective ones, so looking forward, I think what I'd be looking for is, I know SMART, but we also need to keep challenging there for ourselves as well. And they need to be clear and transparent, because if we're asking lots of questions about it, and we're probably relatively in the know, how many other people are going to see that, particularly like with the quarter ones that you see with the council tax collected as well. Because I was sat there trying to work that out earlier, just what quite that meant. Just to make it clear for people, that's all. It's not really about adding onus of work, it's about making it clear for everyone what they are.
I think we'll probably have a number of detailed issues that we might bring to bear on individual numbers or performance indicators. I suppose my one concern is the outturn in planning, and it's really the top one, the major planning applications determined in 13 weeks, and probably on the definition of the way that is determined, 100% is correct, but we've got a number of major developments that have been on the books for years, and we need to capture that information too. So we need to look at some of these in some detail, I think, to understand what and it comes back to definitions really, as Nick was saying, that we need to understand the definition of the key performance indicator. And it may be that it might help if we did that with members being involved at some stage as well. And I'll take your advice about how that could be done.
Just to comment on the planning ones, these are mirror very closely the national, in fact I think they are indeed the national agreed planning indicators. If I remember rightly, they go back as far as the best value regime, however many years ago that was. I actually remember it, so I don't want to say how many years ago it was. So I understand your point. I think the devil is in the detail in the actual wording of the indicator, agreed extension of time period. So, yeah. So we have met the exact description of the indicator correctly, but that agreed time period presumably is longer than you would hope for.
But there are a number of users of these numbers. The first is the developer, and the planning inspectorate, in fact. So we need to make sure that we're producing a number that the planning inspector can take into consideration. Otherwise, we lose our powers to do planning. So yes, I understand why we'd want to do that. But there's also our residents, and our residents do really understand that a number of applications have been on the books for a long time and haven't been determined, and we need to identify whether there are such. So perhaps it would be useful to have another measure, which was
I think, Chair, to be fair to Chris and his team in relation.
Not necessarily their problem.
No, but you know, the number of major applications that we get is not the same as it is the number of minor applications. We get a significant number of minor applications. The number of major applications we get is not that significant. There's not that many of them. So what we will see is where they are major applications and to determine within that time frame, within those particular quarters, we will record them. And, you know, they will go up and down from quarter to quarter. And it may well be in this particular report that the numbers that we've determined in those particular quarters are small. Bearing in mind that it's the point at which the application is determined, not the fact that the application is still on the books. So there are applications, I agree, that are on the books and have been on the books for a number of years. Those will then filter through at the point into these figures at the point at which they're determined. We're not looking ahead at the fact, and you know, if members wanted to look at and ask, you know, me to provide them with information about the number of applications that are undetermined beyond a time period, I can ask Chris to provide that information. But we're looking specifically at what has happened in the past in relation to applications that have been determined.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I mean, that's what the key performance indicator shows. But then there are additional, if there are applications that have been sitting on the books for 9 months or a year, or in some cases 4 years, and in one case since 2006, you have to ask why, and why they haven't been determined, and and should they have been determined in that time, and who is suffering because they haven't been determined. Is it the developer? Is it the local community? And so on. So there are a lot of the fact that they've been sitting on the books indicates that there is a problem somewhere. We don't know where the problem is, but it would allow somebody to then drill down and try to identify the problem. But there may be a process problem.
Yeah, but not wanting to sort of be alarmist, but what we don't want to do necessarily shoot ourselves in the foot in terms of the data that we present. Because obviously the government are looking at our performances and looking at how we deal with planning applications and speed with which we deal with planning applications. And these are the measures by which, as Claire says, by which we will be assessed. There are other authorities that aren't achieving the levels that we are achieving, some of which aren't too far away from here, that are and have been under threat with the government intervention. So what we need to be doing is making sure that we're publishing the information that we're asked to publish, and making sure that that information is correct. And that's what we're presenting to you today.
Yeah, no, I understand that. But I think we may want an additional measure, which is the one which just says how long have they been, what's the distribution of applications that have, and time.
And
yeah, I'm slightly alarmed about these planning applications because I thought there were time limits on applications. Is that correct? Am I failing on that? I don't know. But, you know, from the point of view of an applicant, they've got an obligation to put in the right information, and the council must have a time limit set. Is that correct?
Generally, the minor applications have to be dealt with within 8 weeks, and the major ones generally within 13 weeks. But the legislation does allow, in both instances, for us to agree an extension of time with the applicants, and that extension of time is the time frame over which we record the determination period, and that time frame could be extended by 1 month, it could be 2 months, or it could be an agreed period of time, which, depending upon the nature of individual applications, will determine what we feel is an appropriate level. And some of that will be on the basis that the applicants need to provide us with additional information which we haven't, or they haven't provided, which we need to have provided to enable us to assess the application and make an appropriate recommendation or determination through the relevant system.
Yeah. So, but these long-term ones, are they problems caused by the applicants who are just not feeding back the information required? Is that the main reason, or is it us putting too many obstacles in their place?
Some of it is that, but some of it is also the nature of the information and information that's provided by the applicants that may require for us to do a lot more due diligence on them. An example of that would be, for example, where we're asking for a relevant level of affordable housing, and they submit a viability assessment to indicate why the developer feels that they can't deliver the required policy arrangements. We will need to go to a consultant to seek some advice and some assistance from them to try and assess the extent to which the applicant is trying to, tell the truth effectively and have that information validated. And that can take time, particularly on a large, complicated scheme where there are lots of issues and factors which might have an impact upon the development. So, for example, a brownfield site may well have more constraints and contaminants and the like on it, which need assessing a little bit more in detail than, for example, a greenfield site. So, you know, those requirements from us to provide that evidence and then for us to assess that evidence can have an impact upon the timescales over which we determine the application. But at the point at which we will know there is likely to be a delay in the determination of it, which would take us beyond those timeframes, then we generally seek to have an extension of time agreement with those applicants.
Let me just come on back on that, because this is something that's going to come into this. I think this new council's situation, and obviously I'm sort of on the outside, but you know, if we want to invigorate Derbyshire Dales, we need to make sure that we're not stagnating, because development is something that brings regeneration. We don't want to be a council that is putting a barrier in that place. So we need to be quick on our feet and understand that by doing things at the right pace, it's going to improve the lives of people in Derbyshire Dales in the future. I think that is really important, because developers who've got some aspiration and they want to do those improvements in regeneration, I think we should encourage them by giving them the right messages to send out. And that's going to be better for everybody. And we're talking about making Derbyshire Dales a young, vibrant place. You know, we've got to be in step with that.
So I'll answer that. I think that's one of the things that might come out of change if we looked at the planning measures, indicators, to see if there are these applications that are stuck in the system, so to speak, and look at the reasons why they're stuck in the system, and then, you know, we can try and find ways around it. If it's not providing the right information, well, why aren't we putting information onto the web, a list of things that would need to be provided on the website that might help that process forward, so that the applicant knows what information, has a better understanding of what information would be required in certain locations. They may be location dependent. So I feel that we might look at planning some of these key performance indicators and look at our corporate objectives and perhaps come up with a slightly different list of additional ones. And okay, Roger.
Yes, I might just like to. I think this is a very interesting line of questioning from both Councillor G and Councillor Hughes, actually. Just because something is not an approved government standard or requirement doesn't necessarily mean to say that we shouldn't examine it, because I think you're absolutely right. I think people are interested in the reasons without generating vast amount of extra work. And I appreciate, you know, there comes a point at which this becomes not a meaningless process, but one that we do not want to wrap around our necks. Nevertheless, people are interested in why things are delayed. I don't know whether or not Derbyshire Dales is particularly bad at this. Occasionally, I think I hear anecdotal evidence that some organisations, possibly developers, possibly tourist organisations, actually say that the planning process appears to be acting as a block to them. But that's a purely anecdotal thing. The advantage of having this kind of statistical backup is that we can demonstrate one way or another clearly how we're doing. And also, I think, I mean, I come back to the fact I think these are really good figures. I think, you know, with all of those pressures that are on the district council that we know there are immensely, if we can show, it's an if, that we are a beacon of good practice and that what we're actually providing to the public is something which is meaningful and more interesting than is actually required by the government, we could actually be setting the pace for other authorities to follow us.
I think that's right. Yeah.
If I may add, there are 4 planning indicators that are shown. So we look at the percentage of major, minor and other planning applications and whether they are determined in the correct time period. We also have provided information about the percentage of appeals allowed. So the first 3 are how fast we do it. And the bottom one, the fourth one, is how well we do it. And we are hitting the target there of less than a third of appeals being actually upheld against the decision making of the officers at the time. So, for example, there were 7 appeals in Q1 against a decision that was made by the officers, and only 2 of them were actually upheld. So that does give you some idea of the quality of the decision making, as well as the actual speed of it. And in actual fact, in Q2 there were only 4 appeals, and only 1 of them was allowed. So 25% turnout there, which again is below the target we set ourselves. So I don't know how that reflects on your thinking, but to me that does show quite good percentage, quite good performance, that that the decisions that are being made on time, and they are in the main being made correctly.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments on the other points? I think that Helen has brought up is, well, she asked the question. There's a lot of green on these reports. Should we have tighter targets? If so, how would we have tighter? How would we determine tighter targets?
I think that we...
Yeah, just the explanation really is that, as the members will know, the corporate plan will be going to council next week, and there is an opportunity really to reset, and we've already discussed that today, and there's a really good opportunity for members to be involved in that resetting and what those metrics that really matter to Derbyshire Dales looks like, whether they are nationally set ones, whether they are obviously ones that are going to be collected now and will be collected in future by the Office for Local Government, because the list that they are interested in is getting longer and longer, and will move into more areas of the district council's work as time goes on. So there is a real opportunity to involve members now in those metrics that matter, and going back to some of the assumptions on how we actually develop that basket of performance indicators, and whether they indicate change or they actually demonstrate what we are doing through outcome measures. So it was really just to draw members' attention that this is a really good opportunity to reset. And interestingly, as Councillor Shelley talked about, is really sing about what we're doing really well and how it matters to local residents. And obviously, information being published is very open to residents and businesses, and ultimately investors, particularly in terms of planning application performance indicators, and how we can actually publish that in a much more accessible way to be able to make the best decisions, and for people to be able to engage with the council on that basis.
Okay, so I think we've reached a point where there will be a new set of key performance indicators going forward. The question is, how should members be involved in developing those key performance indicators? And in fact, Helen brought up another area which I think is very important, and that is, how do the key performance indicators relate to financial performance and risk performance? So would you like to?
I can already feel Mike's eyes burning a hole. I think again, well, it's very valuable stuff. I think it's important to recognise that what members have got in front of them this evening is performance around service performance, and that is very good. But there are opportunities in which to overlay with that service performance the financial performance of those services, and also the risk profile attached to those services, to provide a more integrated report for members. So there is a stronger sort of 3D type way of looking at that information. Councillor Wilton, we broadly had a similar conversation the other day as well. It would take some opportunities and a bit of time to develop, and probably a couple of missed starts along the way, Mike. But I think there's something very beneficial to have that more broader view on the council's performance, both for officers, and particularly statutory officers such as myself, and for members, to be able to hold officers and ultimately committee chairs to account for the performance of those services that form part of the remits of the policy committees. I'm very keen to develop something like that up, and I hope others are supportive.
I've no doubt, Helen, that those are important factors, and we will need to look at how best we can integrate those into the sort of work we do on sort of performance management. Historically, we've looked at, use it as a bean counting process from what we do, but overlaying the financial side and the risk side is something that we'll need to look at a little bit more carefully as to how we identify what our targets should be, and also what the outcomes could be in terms of the measuring of those. There are things that we do already that we can look at and possibly utilise, rather than necessarily going to the degree of actually taking a lot of time to actually reinvent the wheel for ourselves. There are things that we've got potentially available to us that we can look at, and we can do that. Going back to the point, Councillor Hughes, around member involvement, there is an officer working group met this afternoon who started to Claire and I started to sort of ask the question of those, what do you think could be and should be potential indicators of the health of the authority? And I think it is important that members are involved in that discussion and debate, because we wouldn't want to, get to a situation where members aren't in a position where they're comfortable with what they're asking us to monitor and manage going forward. And they need to be relevant indicators for members to be happy that they feel that they are the right measures of how the authority's performance and the general overall health of the authority.
So does anybody have any comments on the proposals that Mike and Helen have made?
Yeah, it was really just to say, obviously, I'd had the conversation with Officer Mitchell about this, and I think a lot of the KPIs we're looking at here are very retrospective, and I think if we start looking at finance and other issues and risk around that, I think we're going to be more forward-looking, and I think bearing in mind the challenges that are coming in the years to come within the council, I think having that forward look, I think is going to really help us to plan around and make sure we're a safe council and that we're working in the right manner.
So I think I've been thinking along the lines, and probably with Helen's advice and Mike's advice, on along the way towards some member involvement in developing the KPIs and the framework, the overall evaluation framework that might include finance and risk. And I think what we would need, therefore, are members who are willing to work with Claire and Mike on doing that. And I don't know if there are members in this group who would be interested in that, or we should put it out to the wider membership. Any takers?
Yeah, I'm happy to put myself forward for that and to help it, certainly from a governance point of view, governance and resources. I think that was.
Right.
But
Thank you.
I think it would need other members conscious of just being me.
Okay. Okay, but now whether we need to have proportionality or cross-group membership, that's another issue, and I think possibly we are not prepared to make that decision at this meeting. But would it be something that we could do under delegation, so that if a proposal was made, it would be circulated and then made a recommendation to council on the basis of perhaps, Helen, if you could talk to other members of the Scrutiny Committee offline and draft something.
Just in terms of just offering advice, so hearing is a small group to look at the development of a new set of KPIs aligned to the new corporate plan. What we can do is, Council, if we agree that approach today, we can email out to wider members and maybe just get nominations for a small working group of the Scrutiny Committee to come forward and work and partner with Claire, Mike and others to bring that forward and report to the Scrutiny Committee progress at their last meeting of this municipal year in March. Won't be completely finished, but I think there'll be some principles probably to bring and share with members at that stage.
And that would be at the same time as the corporate plan is determined as well. So that would be a good
Lovely
time to have
timing.
it. Yeah. So can we put forward that as a proposal? Nick, you'll propose it? Do we have any?
Yes, I propose that.
Okay. Anybody want to second it? Peter. Okay. All those in favour? All right. Thank you. Thank you very much. The interest was the amount of debate you can have around it and the structure of it as well. So thank you very much for preparing that, Claire. It was a very useful piece of work and very good. The colour scheme works really well, except I'm disappointed that the Liberal Democrats are those that are not doing so well.
If you don't mind me adding a few last remarks, just going to say it is useful to have KPIs that do reflect our performance and can be measured against other councils. So the whole benchmarking thing is really important because it gives us a wider perspective, you know, so that we can have a look at other areas with similar profiles as to how we're doing in comparison, and that can shed a lot of light on our performance, whether it is better than perhaps we'd hoped from our own figures, or whether actually, as you said, although it looks good on paper, actually there's people who are doing better and we can maybe learn and move on from there. And in terms of presenting, we're constantly looking at ways to put the information forward to people in a way that just makes it the easiest to understand. So yeah, that's one thing I do, is have a look at other councils and how they're putting things through, so that we can make the reports as easy to understand and work from as possible.
Thank you very much. Okay. Leave that one now and move on to the next item, which is future workforce for Derbyshire Dales.
Thank you, Chair. Bringing this forward for members to consider doing a short piece of work with Paul Wilson in his capacity as the head of paid service. Members will recall they received a paper at Scrutiny Committee that also went to Council in September in respect of the sharp challenges facing the workforce here at the District Council, both in terms of the shape of it and recruitment and retention issues in particular. Paul has kindly requested the support of Scrutiny members to form a small working group to help navigate some of the options that were in that paper that members considered in September, in order to understand some of the issues that the District Council is currently facing in respect of recruitment and retention, and again to provide some long-term strategic guidance in respect of the overall resilience of the Council's workforce. There's two stages to this. The first really is to review the recommendations that were made to Council in respect of the immediate challenges on recruitment and retention, and provide some recommendations on that to a fairly rapid timescale, Chair. And then the second, if members wish to take this on, is a much more longer term view on the overall shape of the workforce of the District Council in future. Members will have been at recent corporate plan briefing sessions in which they've seen Karen's, the Section 151 officers, calling it the table of doom, in which the sort of final 2 years of the current administration, the financial health of the organisation does not look rosy, and that will ultimately impact on the workforce of the council. So there is some long-term visioning that needs to be done in respect of the scale and workforce needed in which to work in that kind of environment. So just taking it first principles, that first piece, Chair, is in respect of the recruitment and retention benefits associated with the council's workforce. I'll be looking for members to to come forward to provide a small working group in which to provide recommendations, ultimately to Paul, but then ultimately onto council for decision. And I'm happy to bring the terms of reference back again, Chair, once that piece of work is completed, to see if members have got the appetite to doing that longer term piece of horizon scanning in respect of the council's workforce. I'm happy to take any questions on that, but given that we've just talked about the council's performance, we deliver through our people. We're not here as robots, so it feels as though it's the right time to bring this piece to the committee's attention. Thank you.
So this is quite an urgent piece of work, and I think we're looking at to bring it to count back here for the March meeting. But it would be nice to do it, to complete it by February the 29th. I can't remember why now. Okay, good. But if we do that, we'd have to have delegated authority or an extraordinary meeting. Now, what I think we should try and do is meet and discuss and make recommendations about the acute workforce crises in planning, legal, and accounting. And we're just starting another round of applications for planning, and we're looking for, is it 3 planning officers effectively overall? Three officers short, 2 in the development management group, and 1 in the local plan development group, and all of those, the work in both of those groups is absolutely essential if it's done to time, as we've seen from the key performance indicators. It's absolutely essential that we have the staff in place for the development management group, and it's also to meet the deadlines, which are quite tight for the local plan, that we have somebody in place to do that. So I think if this current round fails, then we're going to have to go out and use contractors, I would imagine.
They may be part of the mix, yes.
Yeah. Gareth.
Could I talk about this, because it's something that's close to my heart, actually, this, because I think with staffing, you need to really look at the future. And if you want to make the council vibrant, you've got to take the risk with young people. Now, I mean, does this council have any connections with universities in planning sections? I mean, you know, I know it sounds slightly, it's like having an academy in a football team, but if you bring people in at a young age who've got some expertise and wherewithal, you can bring them up, and they could, you know, it could be a seed for the future. And I just think, you know, if we want to make this a young and vibrant council in a young and vibrant area, that could be a way of going, because we know, I mean, I've had experience from Amber Valley where they're struggling to find really experienced officers in all departments. It's a virtual impossibility due to pay scales and such like. So do we need to breed our own staff by going down that route? I'm just throwing it out to everybody, because what I've found with young people these days is that they're very technical on a high level. And you know, it's just go to places like Sheffield, Leeds, Newcastle, talk to the professors. Can we have some connection with them? They bring people in on like Master of Planning and etc. and stuff like that. It could help you.
Thank you, that's useful. Helen.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, that certainly the spirit of growing your own was part of Paul's report that went to council, and particularly looking at apprenticeships and also graduate apprenticeships as well, in which to bring younger people into the council with, you know, the technical expertise, and then utilise the sort of graduate apprenticeship programme as well, just to support that on-the-job but structured learning that is necessary. So again, that was one of the options. All of the options, however, do come with them a price tag, or indeed the need in which to develop the scheme, which is a cost in itself through the time of relevant staff in the organisation to develop a scheme, to publicise it, and ultimately to manage an apprenticeships programme. It's not straightforward, and obviously there are a range of funding streams that the council may or may not be able to tap into, such as the apprenticeship levy as well, in which to offset some of that cost. So again, I think that again the questions that Councillor G has raised are completely relevant to the piece of work that's in front of members, and maybe Councillor G wants to put his name forward for the task group.
One of the things that I think about planning is that in a small council like Derbyshire Dales, planning is something, if we pump it up, that's something that can bring income in the future. And if we want to invite businesses to come to Derbyshire Dales, not only housing and businesses, we're going to need planners to process those applications. And so it could be an investment that will give us a return in the long term, rather than just an in-year cost that we can never deliver back. So yeah, I'd definitely be up for that.
Good, thank you very much. So, do we have any other volunteers? In which case, I think what we propose to do is to email the leaders and the deputy leaders, as well as the political groups, asking them to provide members who would sit on this committee, on this work group. And I think we're looking for one person from each political group, and that so you know, one Conservative, one Green, one Labour, and one Liberal Democrat. Noting that there are no Labour or Greens here tonight. So can I propose that we do that? We email out with the details of the task and finish group, some indication of the timescales over which will operate, and asking for member volunteers from each group. So if I propose that, would anybody, Gareth, thank you very much. So second, all those in favour? Thank you very much. Moving on to the next item, that's the scrutiny of the Flood Authority. Now, Helen and I reviewed the terms of reference that we agreed at the last meeting, and on advice, we've produced a slightly different set of terms of reference, which we'd like to put before you. The difference between these is really the first aim is a new aim, and that is to determine whether the recommendations and advice provided by the LLFA is fit for purpose. The previous terms of reference, we seem to be indicating that they were not fit for purpose, and that was prejudging the outcome of this review. So we've added this particular aim, and we've changed some of the wording in the introductory background section, so that it is about reporting what people have told us, rather than stating an opinion.
Thank you, Chair. So in similar terms to the previous scope of work, we'll be seeking a task group to undertake this piece of scrutiny. There is a really good opportunity here for members to do what good scrutiny is all about, and that is engage with the public. So this will be the first proper piece of scrutiny that the council will be doing in respect of public engagement. I think particularly on the back of recent flooding incidents in the district, I would determine that this is a piece of work that certainly meets public interest in this part of the world. So just to advise members, what we're proposing to do really is just publicise the work that members are wanting to do, wanting to gather the experiences of people that have flooded, and that includes businesses as well. I think it's important as well, given the new corporate plan talking about economic development, to engage with businesses to understand the impact of flooding, for members to gain a really sharp perspective on what it's like and what are the different roles and responsibilities around flooding. Naturally, there are many issues at the moment in respect of planning. This scrutiny will sit above those matters that are currently in planning, as we have discussed. But I think it's really there for members to gain that sharper understanding of the experiences of planning on residents, on flooding, from residents and businesses, and be able to rate recommendations to affect change in that area to the authorities that have responsibilities for flooding in this part of the world. So again, just looking for a task group membership today, Chair, with a view to sort of starting to collect those experiences as soon as possible.
I would point out that we've also been in contact with North East Derbyshire, and because there's been flooding around Clay Cross and other areas of North East Derbyshire. Okay.
Yes, that's right, Chair. So the council are keen to provide some contributions to this, so we can be able to schedule in conversations with colleagues at that council and try and appraise members of some of the issues that have occurred as well, because there are some synergies there and some learning perhaps to take advantage of.
Okay, so again, we're looking for volunteers for this, but again, it may be better that we go through, given there are only 5 of us here tonight, it might be better for us to go straight to a request to leaders to, again, in the same format, to ask for people to sit on a task and finish group in this particular area. What we're looking at, I mean, there are issues here because we're looking at the interface between, in some extent, we're looking at the interface between the LLFA and the planning authority, and this probably means that people who sit on the planning committee should not be on this particular scrutiny committee. So we're looking for people who aren't on the planning committee to take a lead here. So again, can I propose that we approach? Well, first of all, are the terms of reference acceptable to members? And okay, so would anybody be willing to move the terms of reference?
I'm willing to move the terms of reference.
Okay, right. Thank you. All those in favour? Okay. And then in terms of the way in which we approach, identify people to join this particular group, does that meet? If I propose that, would anybody like to second that? Yep, Roger. Yeah. Okay. All right. All those in favour? Thank you very much. That's good. Good. Thank you very much. Now, what do we have? Oh, the last thing on the agenda is the programme of work. Okay.
Thank you, Chair. So in front of members this evening is the work programme for the current municipal year. There are a range of topics on there, some of which can be suited to be carried out at committee itself, some within task groups, and we've already covered some of those areas this evening, Chair. I think I'd like members just to consider whether there are any issues that they're wanting to put on the work programme for consideration, a bit more detailed work, or whether things need to be reprioritised. There's some of the considerations that members may wish to consider as part of developing the onward work programme. Well, obviously, we are coming to the end of the municipal year. We've already covered flooding within the Derbyshire Dales as part of the previous item. We've also had a conversation today about corporate plan key performance indicators for Q1 and Q2. Members have agreed to form a sort of small working group to look at the KPIs associated with the new corporate plan. And I make the assumption that members would want to have a look at performance information on a quarterly basis as part of the new municipal year. That would be ideal to discuss. In respect of the waste collection contract, a working group is already in the process of being set up. It would be remiss of me to not say it would be a bad idea to duplicate that work in some way, shape or form. So I think it's appropriate maybe just to seek the committee's agreement to remove that line from the scrutiny work programme, but to recognise that the group leaders have been asked to identify members to come forward as part of a waste working group that will likely take between 12 and 18 months to conclude its work. So if you're not aware of that, please do speak to group leaders about that. And then there is a piece of work on there around consultation, engagement, which I'm keen to sort of bring forward for the next meeting, ultimately the final meeting of this municipal year. I'm grateful for any assistance that any members might be able to provide on that one in particular. And then the last one is around the scrutiny of policies to identify any indirect discrimination. So this is a key feature within the council's corporate plan and the sort of overall themes around fair, responsive and non-discriminatory way in which the council must carry out its business. I think this could be a fairly short, sharp piece of work if it's focused on specific policies. I think we've discussed, Chair, the home options policy, and for members to get some assurance that that policy has been drafted in the spirit of not indirectly discriminating people. So that's the work programme, Chair. So I'm really looking for members to consider, provide any and ask any questions within, to remove the waste contract from the programme, to agree to put into the programme a review of KPIs or the development of a new set of KPIs for next municipal year. And just to note the consultation engagement process, which I will bring, and then also to note the indirect discrimination piece with a particular reference to home options. But there could be other policies that members might want to have a little look at in a short, sharp piece of work that probably could be carried out in a single day if we lined everything up well enough. Thank you.
Any questions or comments?
No, I had actually suggested the combining the waste collection contract with actually the wider discussion to Councillor Flitter, actually, because it made sense to not double up on efforts, to be honest with you. Is there anything else like that we need to consider on doubling up of efforts that we need to make sure we don't tread on in any other working groups?
I haven't found any so far. I don't think there are.
This removal of the waste contract, it does mean that the waste contract will be discussed across the council. Yeah.
Yes, it does.
Yeah, because that's obviously quite a large contract, as you can imagine.
So I think what we expect the working group to do, first of all, is to review the current contract and the performance against the current contract.
Yeah.
And try and isolate what was Serco's problem. Yeah. And whether there was anything in the contract that which forced Serco to work in a particular way. I mean, yeah.
So obviously the council will ultimately re-procure the waste contract in a few financial years' time. This is all part of the council getting ready for that contract coming to an end and engaging members at a very earliest point on the process that we need to go to work out what the options are for the council going forward in terms of what's the best value and right for the council going forward. So it will look at all elements of the current contract and the opportunities for the future. If I recall, Chair, that the request for members to come forward was probably issued about 10 or so days ago. I'm still waiting for those members to come forward, so please do chivvy away if you're able to.
Could I just, because I know at the recent meeting, was it Tuesday? Monday's meeting, when we were discussing the surplus amount of money, because it seems the council have got £500,000 put aside towards the lorries, that doesn't sort of predetermine any decisions in terms of how the money's spent on a waste contract, because obviously that is the council spending £500,000 on lorries to do the waste contract.
Yes, I think that's putting money aside.
Yeah,
Whether it's
yeah.
actually used in that way is, would be subject to a future
Yeah.
decision of council. So,
Yeah.
if we bought into a contract where the waste vehicles were provided by the contractor, then we wouldn't need to spend the money in that
Yeah,
area. But
yeah.
we'd have higher operating costs.
I mean, I'm not saying that's a bad thing, because I think it's a good thing, but it's just so the council's aware of all the negotiations, etc., because it's all very complicated when it gets to waste contracts, which is the best decision.
Okay, now I think the only other thing I would say on this is that under the home options scheme, it may be the application of the home options scoring system that would be indirectly discriminating, and so we would want to include that as part of the scrutiny. And we've had some discussion, Helen and I have had some discussion about whether the information systems should be considered in the consultation and engagement as part of the consultation and engagement process, because certainly the information systems will help or hinder consultation and engagement with the public, but they do a lot of other things as well. And at some stage, we will need to think about management information and the management information, the information that is available around key performance indicators and in other ways for the better management of the council. And that would be a very large piece of work. But I feel that perhaps we should take that out of, the limit, there would be a limit placed on the work that was done on information systems associated with the consultation and engagement process, and it would be about the interface with the public that those information systems provide or don't provide. Okay. Any other comments? Okay, well, thank you very much. I think that concludes tonight's business. Thank you very much.